Hello, welcome everyone. Thank you so much for joining us for our Making Decisions When Facts Are Few and Far Between. Good decisions lead to good business with expert strategist Laurie Taylor. Hello, Laurie.
Hey, Anissa, how you doing?
Doing great. Thank you so much for joining us and being willing to share your expertise with us.
I'm happy to do that. It's fun. I'm looking forward to it. It's great to just, get a chance to connect because we're all so isolated right now. So
that is a true statement. So welcome again. I know that some folks are coming onto the call. We're going to get started here pretty quickly. And yes, thanks, Paige. Is asking everyone, so we're happy to have you. Let us know where you're from. And thank you for joining. So let's go ahead and get this show started. We're going to have a lot of fun. Thank you for joining. My name is Anissa Avon, and this is a part of our Leading in a Crisis virtual summit, business and HR strategies for navigating crisis and change. And today, I'm very excited to have one of my peers and mentors, Laurie Taylor, with us. Thank you, Laurie.
You are so welcome.
And I'm super thrilled that she has selected this topic about making decisions when facts are few and far between. Good decisions lead to good business. And I don't think that we in business talk enough about quality decision making. And it's so much more than shoot from the hip. It's so much more than, gosh, what does my gut say? It's so much more than, well, I read the numbers and the numbers say X. And we're going to get into that. So before we do, I am so grateful that our sponsors had decided to help us pull this summit off. One of our sponsors is the Whitmarsh Consulting Group. And I want to say thank you to David Whitmarsh and his team of HRIT consulting specialists and multi-channel marketing communication strategy specialists. I do encourage you, if you have marketing needs or one of the things he always does is just offer a free consultation. If you have a marketing question about multi-channel marketing, reach out to him. He'll be happy to support that dialogue. The other sponsor that I'm super grateful for is Insperity. And Insperity is HR that makes a difference. And when I asked Insperity to sponsor, they didn't hesitate. They said, sure, love to. Love the idea of trying to make a difference during this difficult time. And I said, well, okay, great. Will you also provide something free for our attendees, something of value, if you don't mind? And they didn't just throw a PDF at me. They didn't just say, yeah, I've got this e-course, which would have been fine. That would have been great. They actually said, well, how about a free HR financial analysis report and debrief? And I pushed back a little because I said, not all of our audience members are actually going to be a good fit for you guys as a client. Are you sure that's what you want? And Josh, our business performance advisor over there, said, yeah, this is about helping people right now. So he'll spend anywhere from 3 to 10 hours evaluating your budget, and then he'll prepare a one-on-one debrief and confidential report. Right now, we know that HR has had to throw out your budgets. We know that what you planned for this year is no longer in the works, or it certainly has to be reevaluated. So if this service can be of support to you, reach out to Josh at that turnkeycoachingsolutions.net/HR report to take advantage of that. Now we're going to get into strategy and critical thinking and quality decision making and how to make decisions when you don't have all the facts. And one of the things that TurnKey is doing at this time is we've taken a look at our programs that would be supportive during a time of crisis. And one of them is our data-driven strategic alignment/crisis management strategy process. It produces clarity, predictability. It helps your executive team focus on the right things in the right order to manage this crisis and beyond. And we've done something pretty unique. We have created a name your own price program plus expenses. Expenses are pretty nominal. And then we know what we would typically charge. We know what our competitors charge for this, but guess what? We're not going to give it away for free, but it's pretty much the next best thing. Name your own price. So do reach out if I may provide a little clarity on helping your team manage what comes after this crisis, or put together your crisis plan strategically. My name is Anissa Avon, and I'm the CEO of TurnKey Coaching and Development Solutions. We are a leading provider of enterprise learning and development solutions. And when I went to my internal team, I don't know, last week in March, however many years ago that was, it seems, and I said, world is about to change. Economy is about to change. Things for our clients are about to get really dirty and in many cases sad and full of anxiety and fear and doubt and you name it. What do we do? And immediately my internal team was like, we've got a lot of experts that know how to manage this. Great idea. Let's reach out. I reached out to Laurie and reached out to some other experts. And right now we have 40 plus speakers, experts that are volunteering their time and energy to present meaningful strategies for navigating crisis and change. So go back to our Leading in a Crisis virtual summit portal. You'll see almost daily we are adding new speakers and new experts. And if there's a topic that you'd like to see that we haven't covered yet, please knock. Let me know. I want to scour our subject matter expert universe to make that happen. So I'm looking forward to your feedback. So Laurie Taylor is a business strategy consultant, speaker, author. She runs online financial literacy programs for small business owners. She's a licensed revenue generating programs for coaches, or she runs her licensed revenue generating programs for her coaches and consultants. TurnKey Coaching Solutions is one of those. She's an international speaker, but get this, she's also an experienced leader. She had 25 years running a communications firm called Leopard Communications. And you know, you ran that organization into a very, very profitable organization. So you're coming from this standpoint of having been there.
Absolutely, Anissa. And we went through not anything like this, because we haven't seen anything like this, but the dot-com blow up of March 2000, we lived through and had a lot of the same issues that people are facing today. So I get it. I know how disruptive this can be. So I try to bring that expertise to the table when I'm talking to my clients.
Yeah. Well, so what are we going to learn today?
Well, I wanted to talk about the fact that we're in this, again, we're in a crazy situation we've never seen before. And the types of questions we're asking are a lot different. And really just in my world, just since the 1st of March. So now we're asking questions not, you know, how will we work? We're asking questions like, how will we handle working remotely? What is that going to look like? Or how are we going to, how will our suppliers respond? What does their world look like? Can we keep our supply chain open and functioning in order for us to function, right? Will our employees even feel safe coming to work? Brand new place for a lot of business owners and executives to live today that we haven't been before. Or when will this come, you know, when will this craziness be over? We don't have answers. We can ask all the questions we want, but we don't have answers. So are we going to have to furlough or even lay off employees? And ultimately, should our leadership team start taking a pay cut? I mean, what are the things that we need to decide today so that we can weather this unusual circumstance that we find ourselves in and not get in worse shape? So I want to talk today about decision making, because as you mentioned earlier on our little conversation, we don't talk about decision making very often. We make a lot of decisions, literally. Business owners make hundreds of decisions every week. Over a month period, we're making thousands of decisions. We don't even recognize some of them that we're making. But even in good times, good decisions aren't always made. So when we get into these challenging times, it's even harder. So I want to throw out a few statistics, only because I think it helps I don't know, validate the challenge behind this thing we call decision making. So literally 91% of entrepreneurial CEOs or even executives are confident as, you know, in their ability to make good decisions, 91%. But guess what? Over 60% of those decisions fail. And I get it. As leaders, as executives, we are usually pretty confident about what we're doing. And we've grown an organization to a certain size, so we have a right to be confident. But the challenge is when we're not making good decisions and they fail, nearly 66% of our CEOs never even explored any alternative once they made up their own mind. So I want to talk a little bit about what's going on there. A couple of other statistics that I think are fun to play with, Anissa. 81% of leaders push their decisions through by edict or persuasion. And because we do that confidently, here's the next statistic that's a little unnerving. Persuasion failed 53% of the time. So persuading people to follow our decisions isn't always effective. And edicts failed 65% of the time. So when we've got leaders pushing through decisions through that persuasion or edict, and we're not making good decisions, that's the reason, because they just simply fail. And only 7% of CEO decisions were made after considering strategic priorities or conferring with others. And 90%, this is the last statistic I'll share, 90% of CEOs say there is no common approach or common criteria for making decisions or thinking clearly in their companies. I want to help us understand there is what I want to propose is an easy to apply decision-making approach that can absolutely improve our decisions to make better decisions. So let's examine. What I want to do on this call is just examine what that might look like. So the first one we have to make sure we're doing is being clear. What is the issue? When we're trying to make a decision, sometimes we're not even good at articulating what it is. So write it down. Write down what you think that decision is that you're going to make. And then we have to get buy-in on the issue. And we'll talk a little bit about that as we go. You've got to involve the right people who are going to be impacted by the decision. Now, what we have to recognize is that's going to be different people as the organization, as the decision moves throughout that organization. So the same people that might have to be involved on the front end of that decision, as the decision moves on, we may have to bring in other people, or in some cases, we may have to not involve certain people. So there's some critical thinking that we just have to put on the table before we even start down the path of making that decision. Does that make sense, Anissa?
Yeah, it does. The clarity is often set aside for ill-placed confidence, for example. Oh, I know what the issue is. Oh, I've already got the solution. We already know what we need to do. And if that were true, we would be looking at a very different situation right now.
Exactly. All right, so I'm going to talk about 4 decision-making traps. These are, there's about 10 of these, but I highlighted 4 for the talk today because I think they tend to show up most often. So one of them is overconfidence in your judgment. All right, so when you are overly confident in what you think is right, then you fail to collect any kind of critical information. You simply just believe that what you've got in your head is the correct thing to do. So being overconfident is not a good place to start when you start making decisions. And through this process I want to share with everybody, I'll show you how you can help avoid that. The second trap is called shooting from the hip. And this one I'm very familiar with because, again, as owners and executives of organizations, we we move fast, we have to make decisions, we want things to move forward. So sometimes stopping and thinking something through is just too onerous for us. We want to get stuff done. So when we shoot from the hip, you're thinking that you are able to keep all the relevant information in your head. And so you think, oh, I can make a decision. I know this, I know that, I check this out, but you haven't, again, written it down. And then you get new information and there's no way to check it against the other information. So we're still kind of shooting from the hip by saying, well, I got information, but let's see, I didn't write that down. Now, what did I say? What was the issue last time? So shooting from the hip, another trap that we need to avoid, not keeping track. So when we make a bad decision, we never want to be reminded of it, right? If you've ever made a bad decision, and goodness knows I have, the last thing you want to do is go back and go, okay, why did I make that bad decision? But if we don't track the outcomes of our decisions, how do we not revisit them? So if we track, okay, we made a decision and here was the outcome, it wasn't exactly what we wanted. So if we track it and go, next time I'm not going to do that, I'm going to think that through better. That's the trap, is not keeping track. Write it and go back and revisit the outcome. Was it what you expected? And then the fourth one, we're all pretty familiar with this. We call it group failure. It's also known as group think. So we tend to get a group of people together who we trust, who are a part of our organization, and we believe that just because we have a lot of people in the room and we're generating a lot of discussion, we can make good decisions. But what happens, and it's, again, human nature a little bit, is I believed, for instance, what Anissa said, therefore I believe it. If Anissa says it, I believe it. So you get that whole group think going around the room pretty quickly, and what happens is the naysayers, the people that kind of want to be the devil's advocate, they're hesitant to bring up that other side because, gosh, if everybody in the room thinks this way, who am I to step in and say something different? So we shut down critical conversations that need to happen. So those are 4 of the about 10 decision-making traps that I think people will resonate with. I think we'll all see ourselves. I see myself in all of these. So it's just one of the things that we have to deal with as we run organizations.
Well, and right now, more than ever, understanding that shooting from the hip is probably, or allowing groupthink to cloud our judgment is a much bigger deal. This is not, yes, it's about recovery. Yes, it's about revenue and business growth, but it's also about the health of our employees and the health of our future. It's also about whether or not we're going to, as an organization, be able to innovate and traverse this adversity and come out the other side.
So yeah, exactly. And so that's why I don't want to try to, here's what I don't want to do. I don't want to try to teach your listeners how to create a process of this. We're not in a place right now. We don't need more of that.
Okay.
What I want to do is give you a simple way of just checking in with some of your decisions. And I'll walk you through it. I think even if you just do 1 or 2 of the things I'm going to recommend, I believe it will help you be clear about the decisions you're going to make. Brilliant. So let me kind of walk you through the 4 proven rules that you'll hear me talk about throughout this what I call the decision-making squares. 4 rules to make it clear, effective, and focused on that problem solving. Start with inquire with an open mind for more information. So let's think about that just for a second. Inquire with an open mind for more information. I'll show you some ways of doing that, but this is the first step. And if we just did this, if I could just get business owners, executives, HR personnel, just stop and think a minute with an open mind, I think that would clear the air a little bit. The second one is going to talk about identify and challenge the truth of all assumptions. And we all know what assumptions do for us and why we shouldn't lean on assumptions. So we'll talk about how do we do that better. And the third one that we're going to talk about is measuring the impact. Now, this tends to be in this little exercise, the financial impact. And in many cases, we're not bad because numbers don't lie. Numbers are easy to grab, and we can usually do that. But there's a trick that we need to be aware of when we do this one. And then the fourth one, the fourth rule that we're going to talk about, has everything to do with verifying the alignment with your core values, your initiatives, strategies, and your goals. And again, we sometimes forget just to go back and check in with some of these things before we go off and make a decision that isn't in alignment with where we think we should be going. Okay, so that's where we're going to start. So here's my little decision-making square. As you look at it, what I want you to do is look at the decision-making front door. So down in that inquiry box, remember the first rule, the first thing we talked about was inquiring with an open mind for more information. So here's how you do that. This is pretty straightforward. You've got a decision. You've written it out. Remember, we need to be clear. So you've put the decision in writing. Let's ask first, I need to forget my opinion about this. Do not bring your opinion to the table. That immediately shuts down that ability to be open, right? Forget solutions. Now, this one is more challenging for us leaders. We want to fix. We want to solve. We want to say, oh, I've got that. I know exactly how to do that. So when you're trying to make a decision, first of all, don't bring your opinion. Second of all, forget a solution. Then I want you to ask why questions. If this is the decision we're trying to make, and if this is the fact I have on the table, why is that showing up right now? Why do I think that's what we need to listen to? Why does somebody believe that? And then the fourth one is you even dig deeper. So as you uncover the layers of a decision, if you start asking more why questions and you keep digging deeper and then start asking how questions, how is this going to make a difference? How is it showing up today? Why did you believe this was better than the other one? So all I'm asking us to do in that first quadrant of this square, just even start with forget opinion, forget solutions, ask a few more why questions, and then dig a little deeper. So that's that inquire with an open mind. And he said, that's the very first place. And honestly, if you don't want to go any further, I think that would be impactful. The second box, okay, let's move up to that assumptions box. So the second rule said, identify and challenge the truth of all assumptions. Now, assumptions sound like, I think this is going to be a good way to improve our employees' safety. I think this is going to be a good way to improve our employees' safety. That's an assumption. We don't know it because we might not have dug deep enough to really understand if it is. So are you certain or uncertain about that assumption? Do you think this is the right way to improve our employee safety? Are you certain about that, or are you a little uncertain? Is that really important? Is that the most important thing we need to be thinking about, or is it less important? So whenever you have a decision to make, I want you to just ask yourself from an assumptions perspective, because pretty well we start with assumptions. We always start with assuming something is going to work, or we have this covered. So I want you to just ask yourself how certain you are first of that assumption, or how uncertain are you? What are you not sure about? And then ultimately, how important is that assumption against the decision, or how less important is it? So Anise, I want to stop and make sure, are you getting this? Is this making sense to you? Because I want to clarify it if you're questioning it.
Yeah, no, it's making a lot of sense to me. And here shortly, I'm hoping you'll also say, well, is there a way to interact with this, writing on it, that piece of it, because that's where my mind's going to now.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And that's why I believe the visual is cool. You can see your way through it. So let's keep going over to the impact box. So now we're in the impact box, and this is the one that talked about, the rule was measure the impact. How do we measure the impact? And usually this is a financial one. So when we're talking about the decision, is this going to bring money into the organization? So will we make money when we make this decision? Or do we need to spend money? Is money going to go out? So how much money do I need to spend? Or how much money do I think we will make? So is that going to be less of an impact dollar-wise or more of an impact dollar-wise? So this one, again, tends to be pretty straightforward if you can quantify the numbers, and we should. If we're thinking about doing something that's going to have a financial impact, and goodness knows, pretty well every decision any business owner, executive, HR person needed to make over the last, 5 weeks, 6 weeks that we've been in this thing, mm-hmm. all of them had impact, and most of them had a huge financial impact. So this is that square that says, let's evaluate, is it going to help us bring in money? And maybe not right away. So the impact doesn't have to be today. What is it going to look like a week from now, 2 weeks from now, maybe a month from now? And in our world today, I don't want us to go too far out because it's just too uncertain still.
Yeah.
And then that last square. So as we look at the align factor, if you ask yourself the question, does this decision that I'm going to make, does it align with our core values? And that to me is where we have to start, Anissa. And again, because of the situation we've been in, look at how many organizations, and you see it, you hear about it on the news, are making great decisions because they're focused on those core values. They're focused on what's good for their employees. They're focused on what's good for their suppliers. So they're bringing their core values to the forefront. So I think every decision needs to start there. And then our initiatives. Does this decision help us move our initiatives forward? Or does it tend to focus us on something, one of those shiny white objects? It may be good for our core values, but ultimately, is it taking us too far away from what we originally said we needed to be doing? And same with our bigger level strategies from a strategic perspective. Is this decision moving us that direction, or is it taking us another path that may not be what we need to do? Even though it may line up with some pretty important things today, from a strategic view, will it take us too far away from that bigger picture? And then ultimately, the overall goals of the organization. How does it impact the overall goals? Now, when you were talking, Anissa, let me stop before I jump ahead. Go ahead. Anything you want to add?
I think it's making perfect sense. And I also appreciate how it lands, not necessarily first, but at the very end of this process around core values, initiatives, strategies, and goals. I spend a lot of time talking with clients around values-based decisions. Yep. And how that in and of itself can help an organization be more strategic and make better quality decisions. And I'll just share a very quick example. We have a client, we'll call associate, who has small business struggling right now. And the administrator in the office hadn't finished the PPP, their application. Okay. And the excuse was, well, I have to do payroll. Okay. So in my conversation, it was pretty easy to say, so I get that your core value is you want to get payroll, but didn't you share with me that this will be the last payroll ever if you don't get some assistance? And so she had a difficult time just shifting her values. Payroll is always important, but more payroll and assistance is more important today. So it's those kind of adjustments that help people make better decisions when it comes to values-based decisions.
Exactly. So if you'll go through this one more time, so flip to the next slide and just remind us again, start with small steps. So that's what I want to help people understand. You don't have to swallow the whole square. All right. So let's just start with the inquiry box. So step 1, forget opinions, right? Step 2, forget those solutions. Step 3, Ask why. Again, sometimes we forget that very important thing. Why am I thinking this? Why is this important? So I've got 3 questions, Anissa, that start helping people. So under the why questions, start with, why do we need this? Just start there. Why do we think this will work? Second question, why do we think this will work? And the third question could be, why are you so certain? You're talking to somebody and they're like, oh no, this will work. Oh no, well, why? Why? So now step 4, dig a little deeper. Ask these 3 questions. Why now? Why do we need this now? Tell me what you're thinking. Or why not something else? Why this? Why not something else? Have you explored anything else? And then the third question could easily be, why is this the best answer? So I just want us to take small steps. I don't want you to get overwhelmed with this. I don't want you to feel it's, oh my gosh, it's another thing I have to do. Just start with small steps. So if we start with the inquiry box, here's a real easy way for you to impact and make better decisions. So let's look at this for a second, then move to the next one, because I want to go over.
You're making a case for a mini, M-I-N-I, business case around things that matter. If it's a decision that matters, making a business case, it is worth it.
Exactly. Just start here. You don't have to do any much more. I want you to, but if you just have to make a decision, if you just clarify it from this one step, the inquiry box, I believe you'll feel more confident about what you just did. Okay. So again, I just showed you the picture again. So we went into inquiry. Now let's examine assumption a bit. Let's go to the inquiry thing. And let's talk about the assumptions that we could be making. The first one could sound like this. This decision will improve revenues or profits. I don't know that. Do you know that? How do we know that? So again, that could be an assumption. Another assumption could be, if we don't act now, we'll regret it. Okay, so there's this urgency thing that drives a lot of decisions. If we don't do it now, we'll regret it. Or how about this one? Oh, this is critical to our ability to grow. I mean, we say these things all the time as executives and business owners because we believe them true. And I'm not saying they aren't true. They're assumptions until we prove them. Another one would be, I know the person who recommended it. So there's a trust assumption here. Because Anissa said it, it has to be true. I know Anissa. So, okay, so we do that a lot. We know we put it off on somebody else. Or how about this one? Oh, it'll be so easy to implement. Or how about this one? Everyone else is using it. It's the everybody else doing it. Why aren't we doing it? So all I'm pointing out here is these are typical assumptions that we deal with all the time in different situations. And if we aren't careful, we need to ask these questions, as I showed you in the assumptions box. How certain are we? How certain are we that the decision will improve revenues? How certain are we that it will be easy to implement? What have you done to really prove to me that that's the case? So how certain are we? How important is it? How important is it that it should be easy to implement? The most important aspect of that decision? Or how uncertain are we? I have no clue. And what is it less important? So those, again, if you just think in terms of this assumptions box, test your assumptions. How certain are you? How important is it? How uncertain are you? And is it less important? Don't worry about it. If it's not important, move on to something that is. Okay, so that's the second box. You could even do just the assumptions box and be better and have better decisions because you're testing and pushing against those assumptions that we all carry. Okay, so that was assumption. Let's move on to the impact. This is an easier one. So if we do the impact box, we're going to ask 4 questions. The first question is, will this cost us money? How much? Second question is, how much and when? The when's important, right? Don't just say it's going to cost us money. When is that going to hit us? The third question is, will this save us money? And the fourth question is simply, how much and when? So the impact box is pretty straightforward. It's all based on financial information, and numbers never lie. So if we can get the numbers to support what we're talking about after we test all those assumptions, we'll be golden. Okay, so again, next slide shows our impact box. Now let's go to the final box. Let's go to that align box, and let's start here. Does this align with our core values? So let's ask the question, does this align with our core values? And how do we know that? So as you walk through the align box, how does your decision align with your core values? And you may have to go through those core values individually just to check in with each one. Okay, so don't be hesitant to look at all of your core values and make sure, because it doesn't have to align with every one, but it certainly can't be out of alignment with too many of them. The second one we're going to ask is, does this align with our initiatives? Will this decision add to those initiatives or add other initiatives, or are we prepared to address them? So will the decision we're going to make increase the number of initiatives we have on our plate already? And does that make sense? Is that a good thing? And are we prepared to address any of those new initiatives that might show up? And then the fourth question is, we're going to ask, does this align with our strategies? Will this decision that we're going to make help us reach our long-term goals, or will it cause us to lose some focus? And then finally, we want to focus on, does this align with our goals? And will this decision move us closer to meeting our goals or take us off course? So, Anissa, that's what I just wanted to share with people. Again, it's not, you don't have to do all of them. And if you go to this, again, here's the box. You can start, I'd like you to start in that front door area, because I think if we start there by forgetting opinions, forgetting solutions, because when we don't do those two things, we shut down conversations that are happening around us. So if you come into the room and your CEO has already made a decision, are you going to feel comfortable going up against that decision? So that's the question I would ask. That's why I love that front door. And then you could jump around a little bit if you chose to. But any one of these, even independently, could be a better starting point than not doing anything at all. So what are the outcomes of better decisions? Now, there's a bunch of ones that could happen. I picked these. You will have fewer regrets. Okay, if you start making better decisions, you're going to find yourself not having that regretful wake up in the middle of the night kind of feeling in the pit of your stomach, which we've all done. If you make better decisions, people begin to respect the process, and then they'll start making better decisions. This is a process that you can provide every single person in your organization. This doesn't just stay at the top of an organization. If everybody stopped solving and stopped bringing their opinion to solutions, every division within an organization could be better. And it makes people respect the fact that, oh my gosh, that felt so good. We just made a really good decision. Confidence improves. When you make good decisions, you become more confident. And finally, well, two more. Optimism for the future. So again, when we start making good decisions, we get more optimistic about what is possible versus fear that we don't know what's coming. Okay, and we need to take a lot of fear out of our environments today. And then finally, better decisions mean a better bottom line. So if we need to factor in the reality of better decisions, truly you will improve your ability to make more money. So keep these principles in mind. Here's just a summary again. The first one is going to talk about inquiring with that open mind. Ask, do you maintain an open mind? And have you thoroughly sought out all the pertinent information? Did you identify and challenge the truth of all assumptions? Simply ask. Do you identify and challenge those truths? You know, are you doing that? Ask yourself. Don't let it be a mind thing. Just get it on the table and ask it. Third, measure the impact. Make sure, ask, have you carefully measured the impact on the organization, mainly from this financial perspective? That's the impact. And then finally, verify your alignment with those core values, your initiatives, strategies, and goals. Ask, is your decision in alignment with those 4 things? That's what I wanted to share with your listeners, Anissa.
I think that I think that's very helpful. One of the things that struck me about something you said a few minutes ago, even if a leader has God-given quality decision-making competencies, right? Which frankly, some leaders naturally have the ability to assess a situation in their particular industry or market better than others. I think if you take that same leader and you perhaps put them in a different market or a nonprofit or a different situation, that might not be the case. But then there's some people who just have the ability to look holistically and make quality decisions. But what I think is missing is a methodology to teach your other leaders quality decision making. And the challenge is when you have 1 or 2, or heck, let's just say you've got the most amazing leadership team on the planet and they all make great decisions, you're still top heavy. You'll never have an organization that can drive innovation or respond to a crisis like this with full force effort if those leaders have not also taught their subordinate the ability to critically think and the ability to make quality decisions, which is what your formula shares.
Exactly, because, show me a business college or a place where we really learn how to make good decisions. We get a lot of knowledge, and we think by gathering knowledge, we're making good decisions. And the other point that you make, which is so important, is it's not just about the leadership team making good decisions. Every single employee in the company wants to make good decisions. They value good decisions and they like to see their leaders make good decisions. So having a little process that you put together that people all gather around and use just immediately makes people feel more engaged and involved. Mm-hmm. So it's a win-win.
Well, and talk to us a little bit about, so let's say you use this process or not, and you realize the decision that was just made didn't go as planned. How do you use this process to backtrack bad decisions?
And that's a great question. So I think you do the same thing. You might want to go at the back door. Might want to start with what went wrong. Did this not line up with where we thought we were going as a company? Is that what took us off path? Or was the decision bad because we thought it was going to bring in the money we expected, but not as soon as it did? So we were off in our assumptions about when that money would hit. Or did we really check our assumptions? Here's what we did. Was that an assumption, or did we truly check against that? And then ultimately, where did that decision ultimately start as a factor? Did it start in the mind of a leader and nobody questioned it? Nobody pushed against it? So I love the question, Anissa, because again, it forces it, first of all, to actually write down the decision we made. And we don't do that. So when you get done, for instance, my original thing of how are we going to make our environments more safe for our employees, that's the decision we need to make. Here's what we did. We had a team, pulled together a team that their main job was to clean surfaces and make sure that all plant operations areas were clean and sanitized. So that was one thing we were going to do. What if that didn't work? What if you didn't have enough people on board to do it and it just broke down? What caused that decision not to be a good decision? If you wrote it down and you tracked what you're doing and why you were doing it, it's easier to go back and, well, we only had 4 people. The plants was just too large. They couldn't keep up with it. So we needed more. Let's add more people. Let's make a better decision right now. And let's add another 4 people and see if that helps. Does that make sense?
It does. So you're saying this is an iterative process, and that entryway of forget what you know, forget your opinions, forget your current solutions, and reevaluate. And when a decision has been made that falls short, this is also the matrix, a roadmap to say, okay, how did we fall short? Did we underestimate the cost? Did we not line this up with our real ultimate goals? Or did we make some assumptions that we didn't challenge? And now you have a creative process to work through any crisis, for example.
Or just day-to-day general operations.
Absolutely.
Because I know we're in this crisis, but we know there will be a post-COVID-19, right? We know we're coming out of this thing. We just don't know when. But when we do come out of it, we're going to have, it's going to be an explosion, I believe. Now, it's just Laurie's opinion, but I'm just saying we went into it with a pretty dynamic economy. So it's not an economy issue like the one I had to deal with back in 2000. That was an economy issue. We went in a bad economy. We lived through a worse economy. We came out of a worse economy into an even worse situation. Here we at least know that we've got the ability to come back strong. And when that happens, we're going to be hit as leaders with a bunch of decisions to make. So yeah, I'm hoping
that's a really good point. I know we're coming to our end, but I do want to ask you about this, post COVID-19. How can business leaders, HR professionals that are having to be strategic in their role around managing their resources in the future, and then of course how leaders are having to adapt and change instantaneously to the current needs, but we all know there has to be some foresight happening for what's next, or just like we were caught off guard with this, we'll be caught off guard with the what next also. What is your advice around, how do we prepare now?
I think there's no great answer, but I think the first thing we should do is start talking about it. So I believe, I recommend to my CEOs that we're talking all the time. We're communications, in my mind, is like the biggest thing we can do to help our organizations through the crisis. So let's change some of the discussion, not just to make it around what are we doing today to handle the stuff that we have to. Let's carve out some time every week and let's challenge our staff, our people, to come up with some things that we're going to be prepared to deal with when we're done with it. So if we went into it and things were popping, we were doing really well, and now we came into this huge kind of valley of yuck, what's it going to look like on the other side for you, for each individual division, each individual team? Think about it. Let's talk about it. So first of all, communicate it. Start the conversations throughout the organization, not just at the leadership side. In fact, I'd start it at the end of the organization, bring it up. Let them start the conversations, encourage them to have them, and bring those conversations to the leadership team. And then second, maybe once those get to the top, maybe come up with 3 or 5 specific initiatives, ideas, plans that everybody comes back and puts their arms around and agrees to. Let's work on these 3 to 5 things. Let's come at it with these 3 to 5 things that are going to be our go-to plan in the next, 3 to 4 months, whatever that might look like. Those would be a couple of things, Lisa, I would just think through if I were running an organization of any size today, to make sure that people aren't questioning the what if. Well, what if this doesn't stop? Know it well, so there's just a timing issue, but let's get their minds moving into the world that they lived in before this crisis, because they were all doing a great job, right? We were doing good stuff. So that's what I would at least encourage us to think about.
I think that's fantastic. Thank you. So I want folks to know how to get a hold of you. I also know that you've prepared tell us a little bit about this summary and better decision making.
Well, I just pulled together a quick flyer that just identifies those 4 principles that we talked about, and then gives you that the decision-making square. So it's a visual, one-page visual reminder of the four steps, the four principles, and then gives you the square that you can use as
Perfect.
So
excellent.
And you can reach
and how do
me.
they get that? Can they just email you, or how would you like them to?
They can email me, and I was just going to give you my email address.
Perfect.
Is Laurie, Laurie, at igniteyourbiz.com. There it is, Laurie at igniteyourbiz.com. And I'm also more than happy to talk with you. If you want to give me a holler on my cell, it's 520-906-1119.
Fantastic. Well, Laurie, as always, I really appreciate your insight, and when you share your expertise, I learn something every time. So thank you. Thank you very much. And thank you to everyone for joining us. If Laurie or TurnKey can be of service to you or your organization, do reach out. It would be our privilege and our honor.
It would, Denise, for this. I appreciated being a part of it.
And Kathy wants to know if we can get the slides. And yes, Kathy, we'll make sure you get those. Awesome. Thank you, Laurie. Thank you, everyone. Stay safe and healthy.